hey there, Advising Adventures. It's another episode of your favorite podcast, Adventures in Advising. My name is Ryan Shekel, and with me, as always, is Matt Markin. Matt, how are things?
They're good. It's probably, I think, our favorite podcast. We'll see if everyone else thinks that too. I'm sure there are some. Maybe it's our favorite podcast of our guest today. We'll find that out. Sure. By the time of this recording, I think for a lot of us on the semester system, we are either have just finished or are in the process of finishing spring semester. So it's kind of nice that we're ending that, have commencement, but then now it's the next group of students that are coming in.
Yeah, I have become a little bit enamored with the phrase "the liminal space between," because there's a real feeling of being in between places. And that's just one of the things that, I thought I used to really love about higher education, and maybe I'll find the romance in it again. But we are looking at a really busy summer, and still trying to make sure we're doing everything we can for our students right now. And all I know is I'm looking forward to some other kind of liminal space. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. I definitely know what you're talking about. But someone else that might have some kind of dual roles and responsibilities, being a staff member, but also being a student who kind of understands the process that we're kind of talking about, is probably our guest today. So let's go ahead and bring them on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Giancarlo Labruna earned his bachelor's degree and master's degree in mathematics from Montclair State University in New Jersey before beginning his career as a lecturer at Keene University, where he taught algebra, general education math, and first-year seminar courses. While at Keene, he also served as a faculty advisor for undecided and undeclared students, an experience that helped spark his passion for academic advising. With mentorship from colleague Dawn Marie Dowd, and Giancarlo discovered the rewards of connecting with students beyond the classroom and supporting their goals in more holistic ways. That passion led him to pursue a second master's degree in higher education administration from Louisiana State University, followed by coursework in academic advising through Kansas State University. In January 2023, Gio became the industrial engineering academic advisor at Penn State's main campus. And in 2024, he began a PhD in leadership and academic advising at K-State as well. Since entering the advising profession, Gio has become deeply involved in NACADA and scholarly work related to academic advising. He serves on NACADA's Professional Development Committee and will become its next chair in October. And he has also contributed as a conference proposal reviewer, awards reviewer, Region 2 mentoring program participant, and member of NACADA's research committee. His scholarship includes a publication in Academic Advising Today and his path into advising and the importance of graduate education in the field. His dissertation will focus on graduate education and academic advising, guided by his major professor, Dr. Craig McGill. Giancarlo is also collaborating with colleagues on several research projects, including work with Benjamin McMullen and the Appreciative Research Framework, and a study with Dr. McGill and others on advising administrator perceptions of primary role advisor burnout. Gio, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Just want to say once again here is I really appreciate you both for having me on today.
Sure. So, we get to read the formal bio and jump into just that dump of somebody's life, but it's always best to hear it from your perspective, to have you tell your story and share with us your path, your journey in higher education. So, Gio, what is your origin story?
Yeah, so I started off, as you already said in the bio, I was a math student, so I definitely was not thinking about academic advising very much. Just like a lot of students, I learned that being an academic advisor is a role that someone could have in higher ed once I was an undergraduate student. So I was thinking about becoming a math professor originally, and as time kind of went on, I started to have some experiences as a tutor, got to work with students in that capacity. And I was like, okay, this is really nice just to kind of work with students. And so, but didn't talk a lot about goals, of course, just math stuff. But then as time kind of went on, I had a chance to become a lecturer of mathematics at Keene University. And it was a very interesting role because I was trying to go in for teaching, but I did not think very much that I was really going to enjoy advising as much as I did. And thanks to Dawn, so she got me a lot into academic advising, and it's just kind of like getting to know the students at a personal level, like outside of the classroom, getting to know about their interests, getting to know a little bit about their professional interests as well. And it's just really exciting because when you work with students in the classroom, so it's fun, you can have great conversations with them, but I will only get to see students for maybe like one, maybe best case scenario, maybe like 2 semesters, because maybe they'll take me for like different courses. But in an academic advising capacity, I got to see them definitely a lot more. So I could definitely go for conversations with them for definitely longer than a semester. So having that kind of relationship with them was really just eye-opening for me. And even though I was serving in the role of a faculty advisor, it was just really nice just to kind of like learn a little bit more about the students from that point of view.
So was math always an interest of yours that you were like, now let me go and continue pursuing math and start teaching it?
Yeah, actually, that's what it was before. So I got my master's degree in math, and then I actually was going to do a PhD in math, and I actually did go forward with a program, but I was only there for 1 semester. Because at that point I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I really want to do like research in math in particular. I was still interested in teaching a little bit, but I would say with that experience though, even though that experience led me to the point where I stopped doing work for that PhD program, it was actually a really fascinating one for me in terms of a learning experience, because I started to learn about my shifting interest a little bit. And that was what I thought was a really valuable aspect from that experience on its own.
Nice. So I have to ask, because like you were faculty, you're faculty teaching math classes. You had the first year seminar class. How did it go to you also being a faculty advisor now, working with students who are undecided and undeclared?
Yeah. So what was nice about the class that I taught about, it was called Transitions to Kane. And with that course in particular, we were teaching students about the kinds of resources that were available at the university. How is it that they would try to like manage their time? What are some study skills? That kind of thing. And actually, what was really nice about the students that I advised, and this was the case for all the faculty, well, at least like the ones who were in my role as lecturers. So we actually got assigned the students who were taking our courses as advisees. And we may get some additional ones too for those who were not having like any form of advising responsibilities. So I got to advise those students. And it's just kind of like taking in a little bit about what they're kind of like learning. And with those students who were undecided, and also they were kind of like exploratory as well in terms of like the majors, what was really interesting with that university is a lot of my students were first generation students. So I'm not a first generation student myself, but I got to learn a little bit more about the kinds of challenges that my students were experiencing. I also got to know a little bit about their passions and especially their goals as well. And so what I learned with that, and this is actually what led me to do the Nakata e-tutorial on first generation students. So it was really important for me to think about what is it that I can do to establish the kind of networks that those students can have within the university, and really thinking about what is it that I can do to help them be successful. And more importantly, serving as a mentor for them whenever I'm able to for them, because I think it's important for them to especially have someone that they could connect with, someone that they're comfortable with, and talking about the kinds of issues that they may experience. So that was definitely a very nice experience, to say the least. And thanks to Dawn in particular and her mentorship in academic advising, is that she kind of got to like share like her experiences as well. So that way, at least I wasn't like thrown right into the waters. And so, yeah, so that's what I would say would be kind of like part of those experiences as I was working with those students.
So we were asking a little bit about your interest in math, and I know that the path is never a straight line, right? And as direct as it can be. But did you learn anything about yourself, your own academic journey, or what does it really mean to be exploratory in your advising time working with those students?
Yeah. Well, if there was anything I got from that PhD program in math was that I definitely wanted to do something with research. I just knew it wasn't math. And so kind of like working with the first generation students at Kane, and also those who are, again, like undecided, they were exploratory as well. And especially now working with engineering students. So I kind of like started to open my eyes a bit in terms of what kinds of issues actually exist out there in terms of advising scholarship. So I did not know very much about academic advising as a field as I was working on things that involved math. It was just hardcore, doing a whole bunch of problems all day long. And I was just right behind a chalkboard quite a bit of times, but not always like behind like a front row desk when you're in a classroom. And so when that kind of like changed a little bit with Kane, it was really interesting here for me because at that point, I was really starting to like find my way in terms of what is it that I liked and what I did not like. And that's what I have always tried to emphasize whenever I advise students. So thinking a little bit about what is it about like from their own experiences, what are things that they would like to try to like to do in terms of accomplishing goals? What is it that they don't want to do because maybe it's just something that they don't want to do in terms of an actual career path or so. And from that point of view, that's what I kind of like reflect on quite a bit in terms of my experiences. And sometimes I share that too with my students. So because some of them may think it's like, oh, it's such a bad thing to make switches or so. But it's really important to understand what is it that you don't like in addition to what it is that you do like. So that's something I always want my students to kind of like just take away from an advising conversation.
Love it. So let's talk about maybe the current place right now. So how long have you been at Penn State?
Yeah. So right now it's just a little bit over 3 years.
Okay. So, you also advise industrial engineering students, which, I mean, I think we can imagine that that's a rigorous, maybe highly structured major. With your advising with that student population, how do you help those students kind of navigate both the curriculum, but also kind of the pressure that comes along with a rigorous major like that?
Yeah. Well, for me, what I thought was really important, so it was a very different experience from what I had before, just because I was advising students. Not a lot of them are first generation students, but a lot of them at least had like some sort of like knowledge about college just by learning from like their parents. And especially in the case of engineering, because I never advised an engineering student before coming to Penn State. So what I thought was a good strategy in terms of having the students learn a little bit about the curriculum and really trying to help them like navigate their way within IE and also at Penn State overall is just to get them connected with not just institutional resources, but also getting connected to, or at least connected with other students in the major. So one example I'll share here is we have a student organization at Penn State for industrial engineers. And so we have is the Institute of Industrial Systems and Engineers. And what's great with that organization is students can connect with other industrial engineering students at the university. And what's great with that too is they get connected to learning a bit about what kinds of events that we have on campus. So they would host an industrial engineering career fair, and they also get to talk with other students, especially if they're taking like the same classes. So many of those students will take the same classes together every single semester. So for them to kind of like think a little bit about like the challenges, especially because it is such a highly structured major, it's really good for them to connect with other folks who can actually share similar experiences, so that way they know that they're not alone in that. But at the same time, I want them also to understand the resources that I can actually provide them. So I'll give especially a special shout out here to my boss, Margaret Hammond, because the training that I had when I first started at Penn State was very beneficial. And it got me connected to like basically meet with other academic advisors at Penn State, particularly the pre-major and other department embedded advisors. So learning a bit about the College of Engineering, and especially the ways how we can actually teach students to like confront challenges, I think was really beneficial in the way that I was able to advise students. And on top of that, with the curriculum, it was especially important for me to kind of like think a bit about how is it that students can actually try to do well with their classes. So for the classes that were prerequisites or that are prerequisites for the industrial engineering classes, we have tutoring services within the College of Engineering. So I would always try to give my students that information if they really need it. We don't have tutoring specifically for the industrial engineering courses, but what's good with them, at least what's good with the students trying to connect with other students, is that they would try to form study groups. And that's why I really try to get them connected with other students, especially as early as when they enter the major. So something I actually just started to do with the IISC organization is their student president. So one of my advisees, she actually got to create a QR code for me. So that way I was able to have that in my advising office. So like if I met with a student who was coming into industrial engineering, I had that ready to go. So that way a student can just go ahead and scan it, and then they can just get themselves connected to other students in our major. So that's what I would say with that. And with the curriculum, the other piece is the students are actually assigned a faculty advisor. So the structure basically is I would advise students on the resources, giving out, our standard conversations about classes, registration, all that kind of stuff. And also we get to talk about study abroad and career resources as well. So I get to also have those kind of conversations to help students navigate within the IE major. But the faculty advisor is also helpful in helping the students understand professional paths in industrial engineering and also graduate school options. So I would always try to have those networks already set to go for our students. So that way, depending on the questions that they bring up to me or the concerns, then at least they have a point of contact, whether that's me or the faculty advisor or someone from like a study abroad office or career resources to go through those conversations.
Yeah, there's just so much value for everybody involved when you take that kind of ecosystems approach and you connect students to students, students to faculty, students to support, being in that sort of resource or the resource broker role, as it were. But anytime, I think we like to split students between, these higher, more difficult special admissions programs and those sort of things, additional admissions requirements programs. And I can tell you, having worked with undecided, undeclared students too, they need that community as well to help them navigate the stuff they're going through. And at all levels of what we're doing, finding people who understand what it's like is so helpful. You're now in a PhD program in leadership and academic advising at K-State. What has doctoral study helped you understand differently about the work that you do in the profession of advising?
Yeah. Well, I would definitely say is that academic advising is just evolving as a field. So when I decided to do the master's program at K-State, so I got to learn a bit more about different advising approaches. So some of those conversations I actually had with Dawn Marie Dowd at Kean University. But as I started to take courses and become a bit familiar with different kinds of advising approaches, and especially the kinds of issues that are out there in terms of scholarship, that's what has made me kind of like adapt my practices in academic advising. So I'll give out actually just one example here. So what's interesting about my position is I am the first embedded advisor for my department. And it was always a faculty advisor who was advising the students. So now I get to kind of like throw in some flavor of things that I would like to try. So like one piece is academic advising assessment. So I definitely knew about at least a little bit of some stuff about assessment in terms of teaching, but not very much about academic advising. So that was definitely something that I was starting to think about how is it that I can try to improve my practices with students, and kind of like going to that direction now with the doctoral program. So I'm definitely learning a lot in terms of research methodology. So now I can actually comprehend articles definitely better now than I was like 4 years ago after taking the qualitative and quantitative courses, and just kind of like understanding how other advising professionals have tried to conduct research in definitely in the areas that they have worked on. So it has definitely made me think about how I can improve my practices, whether that's from like delivering academic advising services, the way that I advise students, definitely under assessment. And also something that I also think has been very helpful too, is that I'm trying to encourage scholarship within my work setting as well. And what's also nice is we definitely have some great collaboration type of projects that we have like with other folks. And it's definitely nice to think of it that way, because I think we need to elevate academic advising in terms of its scholarly identity, something that has already been called out for by other scholars in the field. And that's definitely something that is like my main goal is to really try to elevate academic advising from that point of view, and especially as an academic discipline. So even though that we all come in like with different educational backgrounds in academic advising, and they're all like very helpful with that, to say the least. But I definitely think having academic advising established as an academic discipline will come in very handy too, especially for those who are just trying to get themselves to, just like someone like myself who never had any advising experiences until like King University, and you just want to learn a little bit more about what academic advising really is and the challenges, because not every advisor will actually be that, at least they will not always have like that kind of interest if they don't have like the time, or they're not pursuing like the coursework for that. So it's definitely very interesting like from that point of view, but that's what at least I would say with all of that.
How far are you in the PhD program now?
Yeah. So as of right now, it's actually just about to hit 2 years. I would say in about a couple of weeks. So yeah, just a little bit over 2 years now.
Nice. So tell us more about what your dissertation topic is, and what makes that topic important to you, and how's it all going?
Yeah. So my topic is going to be about the graduate education and academic advising. So with Dr. McGill and I, we kind of talked a bit about what that topic is going to look like. And one thing at least one thing that I'm going to be looking into is learning about student competencies from master's programs in academic advising. So I have not done any true formal research for the topic. I'm actually going to be taking my preliminary exam this upcoming summer, and then I'll get more into like the gritty work of the dissertation starting in the fall. And what will happen actually from there is, well, I gotta go ahead and maybe like update my IRB stuff, because that's already coming up now in terms of expiration. But yeah, I'm gonna be doing a collected papers dissertation, and I'll be doing a Delphi study, which is going to look like basically where I'll go ahead and get feedback from academic advising administrators and faculty, and just get their feedback on what the competencies would look like. I'm also going to be applying as a Q methodology, the Q method anyway, and just get an idea as to what graduates of master's programs in academic advising, what their thoughts are about what the competencies are going to look like. And I will also be doing some case studies as part of the third paper that's associated with the dissertation, and just think about what those competencies are themselves. So yeah, no formal work has actually been done yet, but it's definitely going to be going into high gear this upcoming summer.
Well, even just thinking up the topic and kind of thinking it through and structure-wise is a lot of work in and of itself. So you've been making progress, so that's good.
Yeah. And definitely with this topic, so what kind of like really got me into it as well is, actually, I'll give credit here to Dr. McGill, because his dissertation was actually involving the professionalization of academic advising. So I got to read a little bit about it. This was when I was starting to think about doing a PhD, especially with the program at Kansas State. I read his dissertation and I'm like, really? Like, in a good way. It didn't get me like to start thinking about things. So I never realized there was this debate about academic advising being called a profession back like when it was 2010. It was from the Schaefer article, and I kind of like got to like read a bit about it and other related articles too. And one of the items that was associated about establishing academic advising as a profession was actually the graduate education piece, and that there has to be some form of expansion of graduate programs. So, and there's actually very, very limited research on that topic. There's actually there was definitely some research done with Dr. McGill and a few other scholars in the field, but especially for someone like myself who graduated from the Kansas State Academic Advising Master's Program, it definitely caught my interest. So that's why I'm kind of like thinking, okay, I'm gonna just go into it, and we're gonna see what comes out of it.
Well, I'm sure that there are people who are thinking about the graduate options available to them, and are they accomplishing what they set out to accomplish, and what's the framework? And that work is going to be really important, not just for your own journey, but for the field as well. So I look forward to that. You've mentioned a couple of different times just the role that others mentoring you along the way have played in your journey, whether we're talking about Dawn Marie Dowd or Micah Salavante, even Dr. McGill. What has good mentorship look like for you at these parts of your experience?
Yeah. Well, I think of it a lot like an academic advisor in a way, because the one thing I feel like that mentors have to do is that they have to listen to their mentee, listen to them about the kind of issues that they're experiencing. Otherwise, a mentor just cannot mentor. And every single mentor that I've had has listened to everything that I actually brought up as like issues or questions that I had. And they've been wonderful. And they also share like their experiences as well. They don't have to be, of course, the same kind of like situations that I would be in, but giving me like feedback in terms of how I can go about like certain things has definitely been beneficial from that point of view. But also on top of that, I also think of it like developmental academic advising, where we're talking about like shared responsibilities, and thinking about it from that kind of analogy, the mentee also has to provide as many details as they can for the kind of assistance that they're looking for too. And because then that way the mentor can be in a very good position to provide very valuable feedback. So I know when I first became an academic advisor, so it was actually she wasn't my supervisor at the time, but now she's my supervisor. That's Margaret Hammond. She suggested that I actually sign up for the Region 2 mentoring program from the CATA. And that's actually how I got matched with Micah from that program. So I kind of like talked to her a little bit about like what things were going well, what things were not going well, and kind of like getting her feedback. And actually what was really nice with it is the program was supposed to be for 1 year. I decided to sign up for a second year as a mentee, and I specifically requested to have her again as a mentor, just because she provided very valuable information on how I should go about like just getting started as a full-time academic advisor, and really thinking about ways I can like implement like certain kinds of strategies and where I can make improvements, especially because I never implemented any form of advising assessment yet. So that was really good. And then with Dr. McGill, he was actually the very first professor I had from the master's program. So we're going all the way back from the very first course I took actually in 2022, started the master's stuff officially in 2023. And he was very valuable in the sense of just not just like with just identifying like courses that I would need to take, but also thinking about things from a scholarly point of view. And he has been very good, especially even up to like this point as well with the graduate courses, provides very important like and dense feedback. So I would say with Dr. McGill is getting that kind of feedback. So yes, he was serving as a professor, but I also consider him as a mentor, because just thinking a bit about what it means to provide feedback for folks who are looking not only like to improve advising practices, but also for those who are trying to get involved in research and really how to think like a researcher. That's very important to me. And that's what I would consider it from that point of view. And Dawn Marie Dowell, I will always give her credit for her in terms of having me just step into academic advising and really just going for it. And like Micah, so both Micah and Dawn Marie, they were actually academic advising administrators. And so kind of like getting their feedback on what advising strategies would really just look like, especially at two very different institutions, just gave me like a different set of tools to work with, especially because at Penn State, the student population is especially like very diverse, and just kind of like getting an idea as to how to adapt my advising skills for each, to each student, and just kind of like getting to know them has been very beneficial from that point as well.
I wish that every new advisor could be paired with a mentor, so like a seasoned advisor, administrator, somebody that can kind of really guide them and mentor them. You've had various mentors. What advice would you have for a newer advisor, maybe starting out, or maybe they're in their second year, who are maybe wanting a mentor, but not sure how to ask, who to ask? What's your advice to them based off your experience?
Well, I definitely would say is to start small and just connect yourself with other folks who you get to work with every single day. And sure, it could be an academic advisor, but it doesn't have to be. And, getting to talk to your supervisor as well, as long as that connection, is a very strong one, of course, have a chance to kind of like get an idea as to like what mentoring programs that they're aware of. I know like at Penn State, we have some mentoring programs, and I actually learned that information from other colleagues that I have within the College of Engineering. So kind of like getting to know who you already work with in the workplace is very helpful, just because you don't know who knows what, and you can learn very great information from that perspective. And, and especially kind of like getting yourself involved in organizations like NACADA. So NACADA has a bunch of mentoring programs, whether we're talking about like the regional level or like the national level, like they have the Emerging Leaders Program. Getting yourself familiar with professional organizations that are tailored to your interests, I think will be really helpful for just because that way you get to be connected with other folks. It doesn't have to be like at a local level, but definitely at a national level. Who is it that you can actually get yourself connected with and just kind of like learn from them as well? And because of that, that was actually how I got to like learn get to meet with other folks. So like, I know we'll talk a little bit about the Professional Development Committee, but I got connected with Stephanie Moraro when I was trying to learn about the committee and learning a little bit about what her role was as chair when I first joined. Then it ended up becoming Jennifer Vanderwolstein as the Professional Development Committee chair when Stephanie's term ended. So kind of like getting to learn from them too. That was also another form of mentorship that I kind of like got to learn. So start small, then you work your way out in terms of networking.
So let's talk about that chair position. You're getting ready to step into that role. What excites you about supporting advisor professional development from that point of view?
Yeah. So what I think is going to be so great with my term is I am just really excited to kind of like get to work with committee members who are so committed to academic advising as a profession. And so when I first joined the committee, we were working on a scaffolding project that involved the core competencies, getting an idea as to like what foundational, intermediate, and advanced level advisors, what is it that they should be doing, and the knowledge, skills, and values. So the committee has always provided, or at least they always like exchange out like feedback in terms of like how a project should be going. And we do this in a very collaborative way. So I get to work with the same folks that I actually joined when I actually first joined the committee back in 2023. So we are going to be losing some members. Good for them. They're going to be going on to great opportunities. We're going to miss them. I already know that for sure. But kind of like getting to learn about like their ideas and kind of like getting to know them as individuals is like really good to know, because these are also folks who, like I said, they're very strongly committed to the field. So kind of like, getting to just stay connected with those folks. And we actually just wrapped up interviews a couple of weeks ago for new committee members to join. And I will say I'm very excited, especially for that group, because, we're going to have like a very diverse set of viewpoints that we're going to be able to add on to the committee, and just kind of like getting to work a little bit more that involves the core competencies. I think it's just really nice because, well, before I joined the committee, I never realized how valuable that committee has been really with the core competencies. I didn't even know that they were even responsible for the core competencies guide until I actually joined the committee. So kind of like getting to know a little bit about like that role and exactly like what the committee does in terms of academic advising not only just as a field, but just identifying it as a profession. That is something I'm really looking forward to, and especially just continuing to work with very great people who are already serving on the committee and with those who are just going to be joining us.
Nice. So you officially start October?
Yes. So it'll just be right when the annual conference kicks off.
Oh, it'll be here before you know it. So you've also published about your journey in advising and the importance of graduate education. So I'm curious to know, like, what's it like turning your own professional story into scholarship?
Yeah, I will say I didn't think much about it like before, especially like a few years ago, but it's just what I thought was really nice here for me to get that published was I'm putting information out there about a topic that I honestly felt like has not been discussed very much. So graduate education and academic advising is definitely brought up as part of the professionalization of academic advising, but there is very limited research and very limited literature that's out there specifically that's tailored to that subtopic, I'm definitely going to call it. And just kind of like getting information out there about my perspectives on graduate education and academic advising, especially as a graduate of one and a current doctoral student from such a program. I just think it's really important about getting my perspective out there and trying to get other people to kind of like think a little bit more about the issue and how that plays into developing academic advising as a profession. So definitely getting to see like the new definition and all has definitely been like really interesting, like to take a look at it and just, just think about that excitement about academic advising status as a profession and especially as an academic discipline. And I also think what's going to be good, which I hope will be the case, is I just also hope that it provides some motivation for other institutions to think about establishing academic advising graduate programs. So we really, at least to my knowledge, there are only 2 academic advising programs in existence. And so I think there's really great value in expanding those kinds of programs and really opening up that kind of option to folks who just want to get into academic advising, or at least if they're already in the field, maybe learn a bit more about the topic from an educational standpoint and kind of like incorporating that into their practices already. So yeah, and then I would also say too is it's also the very first piece that I've already published, and it was also really good to kind of get an idea on what's involved in the editing process, especially just because I'm going to be doing a lot of like editing down the road as I do a lot of like research articles. But yeah, I just think it was a great experience for me just to get like my ideas out there about the graduate education and academic advising and just thinking more about my identity as a scholar in the field.
Well, I know this for a fact. There are administrators who are looking at growing programs at their institutions, and there would be some real benefit to having a graduate program in academic advising take shape at your institution that would go well beyond the classroom and influence a lot on campus as well, too. I know that. But you also have been a part of the research committee with NACADA. Can you tell us what you've learned from that vantage point as well?
Yeah. So I've only been on the research committee for just about a year now. And I actually got to do a couple of different things since I was able to join. So I was able to learn about grant proposals and kind of like getting an idea. So like what makes a really good grant proposal, not just for NACADA, but kind of like thinking a bit about how I can write out a decent grant proposal if I was to look at something that's outside of NACADA. just because I want to make sure that I provide like as many details to like not only just about like my topic, but especially about my research methodologies, and kind of like just providing information about like the literature review that goes behind it all. And of course, a lot of important pieces that are going with that. And on top of that, I've also been a part of like checking out like just like NACADA research proposals where they actually get to like send out like the surveys to NACADA members, and like getting an idea as to like what really makes a good proposal from that point of view too. And exactly how is it that you articulate why your topic is important and why it really matters. And also what I thought was really beneficial too from that experience, which I'm actually still a part of, I should say, is I'm also learning about topics. I won't say much about just because of confidentiality and everything, but I'm also learning a bit about topics that maybe I'm not as aware of until like starting like to read those proposals too. So kind of like gaining new knowledge from that point of view has also been very valuable, because then I'm kind of like thinking a bit about, okay, like what research are they going to have out there and what's going to come out from that, especially as a final product. So then I'm like thinking about what is it that I'm going to read down the road. And it's definitely something that I'm really thinking about in my head as I kind of like read those proposals too. But yeah, that's what has been my experience so far on the research committee. So definitely a very valuable one, and especially because of the role that the committee has in bringing forward that scholarly identity of academic advising.
So Gio, as we kind of wrap up, gone over various topics already, very interesting ones. I mean, you're doing a lot of work. I know Ryan and I were interested to know a little bit about the appreciative research framework that you were working with Ben McMullen on. Can you tell us more about that partnership, that framework? I mean, I think you did a webinar series for that too.
Yeah.
Tell us all about it.
Yeah. So Ben and I started to do work on this just a couple of years ago, and he actually approached me to like talk a little bit about academic advising, and the two of us actually have very similar journeys. So he's also a doctoral student just at Penn State. He's in their PhD program in higher education, and we were thinking a bit about how is it that we got ourselves more involved in research, or at least are just getting ourselves involved into research as well. And we were realizing that a lot of our experiences were actually tied to appreciative advising. So when we thought about the 6 phases of appreciative advising, so we realized that they were actually very similar to how we were kind of like starting to kind of just developing ourselves as scholars. So I'd like to kind of like share from my experiences in particular. I know Ben can share more about his and he can go more into depth with it all, but in my case, so kind of like thinking about my interests in graduate education and academic advising, for example, I definitely had to have a conversation with Dr. McGill about what his dissertation was about, and also kind of like get more feedback from him, getting more of my questions answered. And it was really interesting from that point of view. So it's kind of like that discover phase if you're thinking about like what a student's goals would be. And in my point of view, it's really thinking about my own research interests. So yeah, it's tied to the goal, but it's also now the research interest, and kind of like thinking a bit about how, like, what kinds of interests may I want to have, or not only just like the interest, but also thinking about what resources I may have around me to kind of get myself involved in a research project. So not everyone thinks of research as a great thing when they first hear the word research. It may just sound very intimidating, but we developed this framework because we wanted to have a different approach to how academic advisors get themselves involved in research, and kind of just thinking about what support that they may have in kind of like of just moving forward with a project. So what we did was we took the 6 phases of the appreciative advising model and we adapted everything to kind of identify the process on how an academic advisor may want to get themselves more involved in research. But it's just identifying what that journey may look like. And we also want to make it clear too, is that as part of that, it doesn't necessarily be to the point that, you know, they have to go all the way out there at first hand at like, okay, go out there and get an IRB approval done, and then you're on this research project as your very first project. We also want advisors to think about research practices that they can do within their own work, especially as a starting point. And thinking back, especially to like academic advising assessment, that can actually provide some form of research for them, especially for internal purposes. So we definitely developed that framework from that point of view. And on top of that, we also identify ways on how advisors can get themselves to identify the supports that they need, not just from an individual level, but especially from a team level. And we even shared that point of view between academic advising administrator and non-administrator tracks, because academic advising administrators are leaders and they can help advocate for scholarly endeavors for academic advisors. But especially so that can definitely work out, for academic advisors who especially want to become administrators and they see the value of research from that point. But even for those advisors who are not interested in becoming academic advising administrators, they are also leaders by becoming leaders of scholarship. And that is something that we also want as like a takeaway point as well. And as part of our webinar that Ben and I actually gave out just a couple of weeks ago, we made sure to tie it into our personal stories, because we think that that's important for other folks to understand how personal that the framework could be and is tailored to every single person. And so we're hoping that that will help out with academic advisors, kind of like just getting over that hump of like, okay, I wanted to go ahead and do research. I want to learn something more about my practice. What is it that I can do with it? So yeah, so I would say that has been very exciting, and to collaborate with Ben has been a great experience, because it's just learning a lot about different things, just developing the framework, and just, we're getting a paper done now and just kind of like getting that out there soon. So that's also like a very nice experience.
Yeah, well, definitely with your energy, your motivation, the work that you've already done, the collaborations that you've been a part of, like you're already pushing the profession forward. So keep doing the good work, but also don't get burnt out either. Pace yourself.
I won't. Yeah.
But next time you talk or see Craig, tell him that Ryan and I said, hey, okay?
Oh, certainly will. Thank you.
Gio, thanks so much for being on the podcast. It was great.
Yes, likewise. Thank you both again very much for having me. This was great.
Appreciate it, Gio.